Humans are pretty good at discovering animals, but historically, we're not that great at naming them. And that's how we ended up with this list of animals with dumb names. And I promise the last one is the dumbest. Subscribe and enjoy the video. So first up, we have the dumb name of the Sloth Bear, which sounds like some kind of slow, sleepy bear-sloth hybrid. But sloth bears have nothing to do with sloths. They are bears. The name comes from early naturalists who noticed their long, curved claws, which kind of reminded them of tree sloths back in South America. So they decided to call them sloth bears. And the name stuck. But the comparison ends there. Because unlike sloths, sloth bears are fast, loud, and extremely aggressive. They're actually responsible for a lot of bear attacks in India, partly because they live close to large human populations. They are on constant alert. They live in India where they have to deal with other large predators like leopards and tigers. They live constantly paranoid and constantly on edge, which is why they're so aggressive. But with that, most of their diet is actually termites and ants. With those sloth-like claws, they rip open termite mounds and literally vacuum insects up with their lips. I think a more appropriate name for a sloth bear is Fury Bear. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. The next animal on our list is the Florida Panther. It might sound like they're their own unique species of big cat, but it's not. A Florida Panther is actually just a subspecies of the cougar, or mountain lion, or puma, whatever you want to call it. So despite the name, the Florida Panther isn't some special type of panther. The confusion comes from the word panther, but scientifically, panther, it isn't really a species at all. It's a genus and kind of a general term that people use for big cats, especially dark-colored ones, which is where the whole Black Panther confusion comes from too. Black panthers are melanistic leopards or jaguars only. There has never been a documented cougar in black melanistic form, and cougars aren't even in the Panthera genus. So the Florida Panther, not a panther, it's a cougar with a Florida address. Next up is the very famous killer whale, which sounds like it should be the ultimate whale predator. But here's the twist. Killer whales aren't actually whales. They are dolphins. Scientists classify them in the dolphin family Dolphinidae, alongside animals like the bottlenose dolphin. So technically, that big black and white ocean predator everyone calls a whale is really just a big-ass dolphin. The name killer whale actually comes from old sailors who called them whale killers, or killers of whales. They often saw these animals hunting and killing large whales. Over time, the phrase just flipped around, and whale killer became killer whale. The real name to call them are orcas, and orcas are one of my favorite animals. So despite the name, killer whales are not whales, but they are super awesome and super intelligent, the apex predators of the sea, and the largest dolphins on Earth. Our next animal is the electric eel, which sounds like an eel that can generate electricity. And the electric part is true, but the eel part, not so much. Electric eels aren't actually eels at all. They're a type of knife fish, a completely different group of fish found in the rivers of South America. The reason they got the name is actually pretty simple. Early naturalists saw a long snake-like fish swimming in the water, and it kind of looked like an eel, so they just called it an eel. Add in the shocking ability, the name electric eel stuck. And these things really do live up to the electric part of their name. Electric eels can generate shocks of up to 600 volts, which they use to stun prey and defend themselves. So despite the name, the electric eel is not an eel. It should be called the electric knife fish, which actually sounds pretty cool. Next up is the weird ass looking Bearcat. It sounds like it should be some kind of bear bear-cat hybrid. But it's not a bear and not a cat. It does have an official name called the binturong, which is not a bad name. It's part of a group of mammals called viverrids, which are more closely related to animals like civets. So how did it get the name bearcat? I almost guarantee you could guess why by now. Early naturalists thought the animal looked like a mix between a bear and a cat. It's that simple. It has a stocky body and shaggy fur that remind them of a bear, but a long tail and face that felt kind of like a cat. In reality, binturongs are tree-climbing mammals that live in the forests of Southeast Asia. And they have one of the weirdest traits of any animal. They smell like buttered popcorn. Scientists believe the scent comes from a chemical in their urine that they use to mark territory. So the bearcat, not a bear, also not a cat. Kind of its own thing that smells like a movie theater snack. Next up is the flying lemur, which sounds like a lemur that can fly through the jungle. But its name is actually wrong twice. First, they don't fly, but they can glide. And second, they are not even lemurs. Flying lemurs are actually animals called coolagos, a small group of gliding mammals that live in Southeast Asia. So how did they get the name flying lemur? I mean, you should know by now. Early naturalists saw these animals gliding between trees, and their faces look a little bit like primates. So they assumed they were just some kind of lemur. But lemurs only live on the island of Madagascar, and coolagos live thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia. So scientists eventually realized these animals aren't lemurs at all. They're their own group of mammals. Coolagos have huge skin membranes stretching between their limbs that let them glide incredible distances throughout the forest. So flying lemur is another dumb animal name. It doesn't fly, it's not a lemur, it's a coolago, but the name still sticks. On to the next one. We've all seen one of these guys. We know it as a starfish. But guess what? Starfish, they're not fish. They're animals called echinoderms, a group that also includes sea urchins and sand dollars. I bet you can guess how they got their name. They're shaped like a star and they live in the ocean. Apparently that was enough for early naturalists to just call them starfish. But unlike fish, starfish don't have gills, fins, or even a backbone. Instead, they move using hundreds of tiny tube feet on the undersides of their bodies. They have one of the strangest feeding methods in the ocean. They can actually push their stomachs outside of their bodies in order to digest their food. It's pretty weird looking. So the starfish, it isn't a fish. It's basically a walking stomach with 5 arms. Next up, we have the jellyfish. And just like the starfish, jellyfish, they're not fish either. Jellyfish belong to a completely different group of animals called cnidarias. That word took a few takes. So how did a jellyfish get their name? Well, they're soft, squishy, kind of jelly-like, and they live in the ocean. So early naturalists basically said, jellyfish. Sure. They didn't really check to see if they had bones, gills, a brain, or even a heart. They're mostly just a floating, bell-shaped body with long stinging tentacles. Those tentacles contain specialized stinging cells used to capture prey and defend themselves. Some species even deliver extremely painful venom that can be very dangerous when it stings. So the jellyfish isn't a fish. It's basically a floating bag of stinging jelly. Where's the peanut butter? Is it just me, or are the names getting even dumber at this point? Next up is the horned toad, which sounds like some kind of spiky desert toad. As you can tell by looking, they are lizards. These animals are more properly called horned lizards, and they live in the deserts and grasslands of North and Central America. How do you think they got the name? Mostly because of how they look. They have round, short bodies, short legs. They sit low to the ground, which made early observers think they looked like a toad. Add in the spikes and the horns, the name just stuck. horned toad. But they are definitely reptiles, not amphibians. And these guys have one of the craziest defense mechanisms of any reptile. Some species can actually shoot blood out of their eyes to scare off predators. That is one of the strangest defense mechanisms I've seen. So it's not a toad, it's a lizard with a built-in blood cannon. Next on our list, daddy longlegs. It sounds like the name of a specific animal, but here's the problem. Daddy longlegs isn't actually one animal at all. People use the name daddy longlegs to describe 3 completely different creatures. The first is a harvestman. These are the round-bodied arachnids with extremely long legs that you often see walking around on the ground. The second is a cellar spider, the thin spiders that hang upside down in messy webs in basements and garages. This is the one that you're probably thinking of. And the third is a crane fly, which looks like a giant mosquito with legs, but is actually completely harmless. All of them are actually harmless. And the fourth would be Pedro Pascal with some spider legs. He gives me daddy vibes, which means when someone says daddy, long legs, you still don't know what animal they're actually talking about. It isn't a species, it's 3 animals wearing the same name tag. We have reached the final animal with the dumbest name you could think of. I'm just going to tell you the name right now without showing you photos or video. The name of the animal is the mountain chicken. That doesn't sound like a bad name yet, right? Sounds like a chicken that lives in the mountains. But guess what? The mountain chicken is not a chicken. Not even a bird. This is a mountain chicken. Don't be confused because yes, this is a frog. It's a very large frog that lives in the Caribbean islands. You might ask, what does this frog have to do with chickens? Early European settlers on the islands used to hunt and eat these frogs. And according to them, their meat tastes just like chicken. So the name mountain chicken stuck. In reality, this animal is one of the largest frogs in the world, growing up to over 8 inches long. They live in forests and near streams where they hunt insects and other small prey. Unfortunately, these delicious tasting frogs have become critically endangered after a fungal disease devastated their populations in the 2000s. I don't know what's worse, them being critically endangered or a frog having the name mountain chicken. Or that they taste like chicken, but they're critically endangered, so I'm never going to be able to try it. So those are some animals with the dumbest names that make no sense. And I bet there's a whole lot more. If you want a part 2, let me know in the comments. Maybe I could do an episode on animals with great names. Let me know if you want it in the comments. And remember, nature is random and chaotic. I will see you next time.